Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I am doing a show on the band Love Hate. And I'm really, really lucky to have joining me today someone who, well, I don't want to embarrass him, but he's a bit of a legend as far as I'm concerned when it comes to, talking and writing about rock music. He does a podcast, History in Five Songs. You might have seen him on Sea of Tranquility, The Contrarians, various YouTube shows, music documentaries, magazines, and of course, all the books he has written. I'm talking about the one and only Martin Popoff. Hi, Martin. How you going?
Yeah, doing okay. Thanks for having me, Steve. This will be very cool. I don't think I've ever been on a show talking about love hate, so this is very cool.
Exactly. So, love hate, they need more love. So, it's I one thing I noticed too is that, it's just one of those bands that they have a cult following. The people that know about them usually tend to like them, but they just don't seem to be talked about as much as what you would think. And I guess too, when you think about it, back in the day, they had they had some success, but they didn't really blow up big time, did they? So, and of course, when I sort of thought about doing the show, I did know that reading your reviews, uh, gave them a pretty positive review. So a bit of a spoiler there. We both are big fans of this band, but um, perhaps you could, well, actually, before I get you going, Martin, I'll just do a little brief little rundown of the band. So we've got Johnny Love on guitar, Jizzy Pearl, he's on vocals, Joey Gold, he's on drums, and Skid, he's the bass player, and he's actually also the main songwriter, and he also did some of the cover art as well. So pretty talented guy. So Martin, can you start us off? What's your kind of first impressions and your introduction to the band, and maybe just go over some of your thoughts of the first album.
Okay, so yeah, it's interesting. I mean, looking at the history, I guess they started off and tried a couple of different styles getting going. They're just this iconic, you know, usual story Sunset Strip sort of band. And I guess they're operating, or they're trying to get going when all of this is blowing up. But by the time the first album comes out, I think it's February 1990. I mean, it's it's pretty late in the whole hair metal thing. We think of hair metal as being kind of 1983 to maybe 1991 at the outside. Apocryphally, we talk about the Nirvana album coming out, and then grunge sort of takes over, kind of thing. And kind of it's kind of true. It's a weird narrative, but it actually kind of works. But so yeah, they come out with this debut album. And as you say, an interesting thing about this band is that Skid does this artwork, and Skid writes everything. I mean, I was going through the albums. It says all songs written by Skid, right? Doesn't split out music or lyrics, so you're going to assume everything's by Skid. But yeah, so they come out with this album, and the interesting thing is that as hair metal gets older, everybody just kind of gets better. Everybody tries harder, and they're realizing, maybe they're seeing other kinds of music around the corner. They are seeing grunge. I mean, grunge is really up and running by 88, 89. It's still young, but there's also Faith No More and Jane's Addiction, and there's all this other exciting, interesting music around. So everybody's kind of getting better at the game, and this thing came out, and everybody loved it. It seemed like this could be a huge sort of hit band. The production is amazing on it. The songwriting's really good. It's got this sort of decadent, debauched, sleazy, druggy sort of attitude to it, which is something that the grunge people would pick up on as well. Just sort of admitting, all this is going on, sort of thing. So yeah, it feels really sort of sleazy, but on the production end, it's really, really full and muscular and thick. But correct and good and stadium rocking. So it's very, very good production as well. And yeah, there were some songs off of here that did okay. Blackout in the Red Room, the title track was basically the big one on here. But yeah, you got weird titles like Slutsy Tipsy and Slave Girl, and Fuel to Run was really cool. Why Do You Think They Call It Dope was a pretty big song as well.
Mm.
And they got some good tours. They got, I can't remember what order they were in, but I think there's a Dio tour, there's an Alice Cooper tour, somebody else.
AC/DC as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's they kind of got some support out there. I guess I won't go too far beyond it, but I mean
Mm.
they essentially ended up in a bit of a I guess they were in a pretty happy, solid, normal place with the label on the first one, and then things started to fall apart with the label on the second one. But essentially, I think what this felt like is, I've often said the Angels are like the thinking man's AC/DC, and maybe Tank is like the thinking man's Motorhead and that sort of thing. So these guys are almost like the next level, the thinking man's, the better version of Guns N' Roses, I think.
Mm. Mm.
Guns N' Roses is good and it's rated so incredibly highly. So I always get in that talk about, are they overrated? And I think Guns N' Roses certainly, you have to say, is overrated for being rated so high, right?
Mm.
But I swear up and down, and I don't have any qualms about saying it, that I just think Love Hate, operating in that same area as Guns N' Roses, are
Mm.
like 3 to 5 times as good as Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a big call, and I find that really interesting. But I mean, because there's no doubt, I think they were influenced by Guns N' Roses. So I think Jizzy's admitted that. LA Guns, Guns N' Roses. I mean, they came out actually they were together in about 80, they came together in '85 as a band called Data Clan, and they released like a 4-track EP. Didn't really sound like what they would eventually sound like. There's some elements to it, obviously, because it's the same band, but yeah, Jizzy's talked about LA Guns, Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, and even like a little bit of early Red Hot Chili Peppers, sort of influencing them a little bit. I mean, it's interesting too because Skid's the main songwriter, but of course when they all playing together, I guess you get that love hate sort of sound, which is definitely, you can compare it to other bands, but it's very much their sound too. So I think one term you've used too, Martin, sometimes is dirty hair metal. So for this kind of, because they get put in the hair metal genre, that's fine, but they're not like Slaughter. You know what I mean? So Slaughter's just your generic sort of hair metal. But I think bands like LA Guns, Guns N' Roses, Love Hate, they're more dirty, eh? They're more that dangerous, dirty hair metal, which is the term I've heard you use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit, crossing over with the dirty hair metal is the bluesy hair metal, right?
Yeah.
So they're not really like Badlands, I guess, either, but they're
No.
a little bit like Skid Row on Slave to the Grind as well, and there's Sea Hags and Dangerous Toys
Yeah.
and those bands as well. Yeah, so I would certainly put them in dirty hair metal, but it seems it's almost like it's too locked down and too well done to be particularly dirty hair metal. I mean, it's more locked down than Guns N' Roses even is. I mean, and that's one of the magic of Guns N' Roses. It does breathe, right? It pushes and pulls, sort of thing, and you feel that in Slash's guitar playing and in the drumming. Says Steven Adler. It's interesting you mentioned, their sound, and then the fact that Skid's writing everything. It just seems really incongruous that Skid's writing everything, because they do have this super distinctive and magnetic
Mm-hmm.
vocalist in Jizzy Pearl.
Yeah.
And he looks great, right? In the videos and stuff. He looks like the second coming of Jim Morrison, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got he dresses the same way, the same hair, the face a little bit, a little bit of a square jaw to him, right? And the funny thing about his vocals, I love his vocals to death.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're great. It's one of the great things about the band. But it's funny. Kim Mitchell is like this here in Canada as well. And there's probably a few other bands, but there are bands that I totally love. And I've never thought for a second there's anything wrong with anything about their vocals or whatever. But sometimes when I try to turn people on to Love Hate, they go, I don't really like the vocals. So it sticks out to them as something that's a little bit of a negative, which is really odd, because I think these vocals are great. Possibly, Steve, if you think about it, it's almost a little bit like if you think the band are geniuses, right? you're going to champion and go with what they're doing, and you're going to have that confidence level. But if you're just coming at it as an outsider, and it's not really, you're not thinking these guys are absolutely like, 140 IQ awesome
Mm,
version of whatever hair metal. If you're not coming at it that way, Jizzy might seem a little bit like over the top or anachronistic or too hair metal, or what is all these silly things he's saying, sort of
yeah,
thing. And you just think he's another Sunset Strip rat kind of
yeah,
thing, right?
yeah.
So that's the funny thing about it. It's like, I just think they're absolute geniuses at what they're doing, so I'm
Mm,
just going with it.
yeah, 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 absolutely. I remember when I saw the video for Blackout in the Red Room. So that was my first. Hadn't heard them before. That was my first encounter with them, and great video. That's such a powerful song, and I just was like, okay, this is one band I'm going to have to check out. And yeah, I mean, got the album. Interesting that so it opens up with that song, Blackout in the Red Room, which is probably the most well known song maybe, but then the next song is a song called Rock Queen, which sort of reminds me of Rocket Queen. And so you got that Guns N' Roses kind of connection there a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit, but
Yeah.
and it does actually have some slightly dodgy lyrics. I won't go into it, but yeah, but again, that's they're an LA band, and at times some of the lyrics are, I think, quite sort of, they're writing about their experiences. They're writing about what's happening in their life, and what they're doing. There seems to be a bit of a theme with a lot of drinking and drugs kind of songs, like Fuel to Run. That's a bit of a common lyrical thing on their albums, and on the next album as well. But that's just the soundtrack for, I think, LA hard rock metal in 1990. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and you're right. I mean, it's like, if you're starting to get fed up with hair metal and you think, like, stick a fork in it, it's done, sort of thing. You've got this band where the lead singer's name is Jizzy Pearl. It
yeah,
almost sounds like you're making a crappy Hollywood movie or a sitcom about hair metal, right?
yeah,
John E. Love.
yeah,
So that's fake too,
yeah,
probably. Well, probably Skid Row's. So
yeah,
you've got,
yeah.
this guy is like literally named after two of the biggest bands.
Yeah, I think he
Um,
dropped the rose later, or he didn't
Yeah,
mention
yeah,
it.
you don't see it a lot, but
No,
and Joey Gold, you got a
yeah,
Joey and you got a Gold.
yeah,
So it's almost like they just took a bunch of short names and threw them all in a hat and pull out a first name, pull out a second
yeah,
name, right?
yeah,
So there's a lot where it's essentially, and they absolutely do step in it. It's like, okay, they essentially sound like Guns N' Roses on steroids, right?
mm,
Just a better version of Guns N' Roses, right?
mm,
And I'm the only person on the planet who says better version, but
mm,
basically everybody thinks they're kind of like or even Guns N' Roses also ran, right? But yeah, I just love it to death. I think they just nailed that whole thing
yeah,
better than anybody else. But that's the story of late period hair metal.
yeah,
Um, they either, the bands either change and offer something really interesting and new, i.e. these guys on the next album, or they're just a way better version, the very best version of hair metal, and that's what they are on the first album.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, so let's what about Wasted America? So that comes out 2 years later. They're still on Sony, so still on a major label. Yeah,
Yeah.
what's your feelings on that one?
Absolute masterpiece, one of my favorite albums of all time. Just start to finish. If there's anything I don't like on it, it's like a 7.5 out of 10. But
Right.
there's a lot of tens on here. I think they just turn it up, turn up the creativity. The production's even better. The performances, it's proggier. They're breaking rules all over the place. I love when you mentioned Red Hot Chili Peppers and Jane's Addiction, because I think you hear a little bit more of that on here. I
Mm,
mean, even the title is, I mean, it's a hair metal title, but it's like nobody picked it before. It's almost like one of these I make this joke about Alice Cooper Schools Out and sitting in the Warner offices, and one A&R guy elbowing the other guy saying, "How come you don't bring me any songs about the end of the last day of school?" That kind of thing, right? Like, it's just a brilliant title.
yeah,
Very cool cover art, because again, you've got something out of the norm as the first one was. But even, even the picture of the band on the back is iconic. Like
Mm,
that is so cool looking. They
yeah,
look like the Doors, right?
yeah.
And so yeah, everything on here. I mean, especially the likes of Spit, Miss America, Yucca Man, and Happy Hour, and Tranquilizer. I mean, there's just so many just brilliant, brilliant hard rock songs on here that are still in the hair metal idiom. And this is to their discredit as well. I mean, it's still um I think you've got a closer alignment still with hair metal, which is kind of over at this point, than you do with something just super creative and not tied to a genre, or i.e.
Mm,
grungy or something like
mm,
it's not a huge step towards, say,
mm,
Alice in Chains, right? Um, to pick the closest, most adjacent grunge band to this. But it does still have a foot in hair metal, as do many albums still up into this era. You've got late period Slaughter albums and Mr. Big and Poison.
mm.
You've got Motley Crue in '94 and
Yeah.
earlier. You've got who's the other one I was saying? Extreme is a late period one as well. So yeah, I think it's an absolute masterpiece. Most people lean towards the debut. I totally lean towards the second one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think part of the problem too, maybe with leading, going for the first one, is that I don't think the second one was quite as successful. This is 1992, and again, they're whether they deserve it or not, they're still thought of as in that hair metal sort of category. So they're
Yeah.
coming out, and yeah, there were a couple of bands in 1992 that were in the hair metal that were still sort of being successful, like Ugly Kid Joe and Jackal. They were still doing okay, but a lot weren't that were coming out in those days. But I think what I like about Love Hate is, yeah, they've evolved. They evolve a little bit, but actually their core sound is still there. It's still very much. If you like the first album, you'll like this album as well. And they haven't like sort of done what Guns N' Roses. The Appetite for Destruction sounds. Use Your Illusion sounds quite different. They've really changed their sound, I think, quite a bit. But so they're really carrying that on. But yeah, like you said, it's even better. It's even better. You talk about Wasted in America. That seems like such a hair metal type song, but it's actually lyrically, it's kind of they're actually being quite cynical and sarcastic. They're kind of talking about sort of, it's a bit of a social commentary about sort of a wasted
Oh, for sure.
generation kind
Yeah.
of thing. Um, so yeah, it's not actually, oh, let's go, we're having a party, we're having a great time. It's not about that. It's not that kind of wasted thing. So yeah, and actually one thing I wanted to mention, Martin. So I've got your fantastic book here, which
Hmm.
is
Okay.
complete. I've worn it out completely. So I've had it since like 96 or 97 or something like that. But still get it out obviously and use it. And I had a look at your review of this album, and you talked about maybe three best songs in a row, potentially ever, sort of thing. I don't know,
Yeah.
or one of the three best songs in a row.
Yeah.
And Yucca Man, Happy Hour, the songs you mentioned, and Tranquilizer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they are three of the standouts for me as well. I mean, some of those other songs you mentioned as well. I mean, it's just like you said that. But every song on the album is yeah, like you say, maybe at worst like a 7.5 out of 10 sort of thing. But heaps of 10 out of 10s. Yucca Man, I love, especially that chorus, such a rocking chorus. And I was like, what is a Yucca Man? And so I Googled that, and it's like a Californian from a Sasquatch or something from the California desert. It's like some legend or something. But yeah. But and yeah,
Well,
Happy
and
Hour.
I wanted to mention like the song Wasted in America. I mean, what a brilliantly put together, hooky, anthemic, massive. That song should have been a massive hit, right? And
Yeah,
even the sentiments of it, like you say, it's just a really smart way of looking at the whole drug thing. It's a little Frank Zappa-esque, it's a moralistic tale, right? But
yeah.
but you can look at it that way, or you could just, hey, Wasted in America, and it's so anthemically put together. It's like it should have been just a massive hit. It's just bad timing, right?
Yeah.
But they probably, to to the credit of early hair metalers and even Guns N' Roses, they probably couldn't have made an album like this without, the precedent of hearing Skid Row and Guns N' Roses and stuff like that.
Mm.
I don't think I have any illusions they could have put this album out in 1987, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because the hair metal canon had advanced so much year by year with all those albums coming out, and
Mm.
and you just get better, by looking at your competition as well. But
Mm.
talk about taking in every lesson of the competition. It's I mean, definitely, I would say without a doubt, I think it's the greatest hair metal album of all time.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big, yeah, no, great. That's a big call. But yeah, I mean, I do a lot. I profile a lot of hair metal bands on my channel. So I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's an awesome album. And it's the kind of album too that, I've got some hair metal albums I'm like perhaps be a little bit embarrassed to play, in front of people, other people.
Yeah.
Not the album I'm going to put on for you. But yeah, it's like totally like I would be like playing it for anyone who like rock music. You gotta listen to this. This is really good. Yeah, and Wasted America had a music video, good music video. Yeah, I think it's just weird. Now, interesting though, the Happy Hour also had a music video, so that was
Yes.
I guess a single, but it had a music video, and I thought it's a great song. It's very odd time signatures on that song,
Yeah. Yeah.
really unusual. Again, you might think it's about drinking, but actually, you read the lyrics and it's very open to interpretation actually. But
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit surprised. Like it's a great song, but a little bit surprised that one was released with a music video. But
That's a
I'm kind
great point, Steve, because I mean, it's thrashy, it's got weird time signatures. The whole verse riff thing is just like insane genius King Crimson type music.
yeah,
It doesn't make any sense at all. And the one part I don't like about it is the fast thrashy part. I don't think the chords there are as sophisticated as their usual sense.
mm,
One thing also I wanted to add is just in a massive general sense, I've always had it in my head that the first album is big blocks of power chords and this one is riffier. I've always felt that as well.
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just the last of those three songs, Tranquilizer. Now I think this would have been a better second single. Just because it's to me it reminds me a little bit more of something that you might have heard on the first album, and that song they had demoed it prior to the first album, so it actually had been around for a while, that one. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, one more song I wanted to actually a couple of songs I want to talk about. Don't fuck with me, don't f with me. That's what I love about that is it's quite an angry song, but the music isn't angry, so it's this really great juxtaposition, of he's like, and I was like, as a 20-year-old when that came out with long hair, I was like, I could really relate to that sort of thing a little bit too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just thought that was really clever.
Yeah, and it's a good way to do a ballad. It's a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
It's really going for those sort of maudlin old Alice Cooper glammy chords. And then you get into Don't Be Afraid, and you're into again kind of Alice Coopery, right? Evil Twin is amazing on here.
yeah,
Social Sidewinder's got kind of, now you're in kind of a bluesier, soulful, pensive end of the album. It's brilliant the way it almost feels like an album of three thirds in a way. Yeah, Tranquilizer definitely could have been a single. I think Miss America could have been a single,
mm,
because Miss America is almost like a little bit of a dumbed down song that feels a little bit closer to the debut, and it might not have been as much of a meal to try to absorb. But yeah, so much of this could have been. But it really is bad timing at this point. I mean,
yeah,
they really haven't changed their look. They still got the long hair and stuff. Basically, they're looking like Badlands. They're looking like a bluesy hair metal
yeah,
band at this
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Although you got a little bit of flannel going as well. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a shame. But Yeah, I almost feel like I could do a whole book or a whole episode, at least, of the podcast or something on this. On this, maybe I have done one on this late period hair metal scene, but it's almost like 92 or 93 or 91 are probably the best years for hair metal. For an old guy, I'm probably supposed to say 83 or 84. Oh, the magic of when it all started or whatever. But I think it
Mm,
ended more magically than it started, even.
yeah. Well, like I think you've sort of said before, some of those bands thought, okay, we're going to have to try a bit harder. We can't just put out these dumbed down party songs. We actually, we're going to actually have to come up with something a little bit more musically interesting or something, have a bit more effort in. And yeah, like you say, some great albums that just, yeah, came out too late or missed the mark. Yeah, Badlands, Blue Murder. Um, those are two examples, I think, of great bands that just, yeah, didn't break through in the late 80s, early 90s. And yeah, there's lots more as well. Um, so yeah, we really just wanted to talk about those two albums, but those are the ones that I think probably most people are aware of. Um, but I know that from your book as well, you've reviewed and heard the albums after that. So there is more output. So they did Let's Rumble in '93, and they did I'm Not Happy in '95. Yeah, so I've got those ones here too. Um,
Yeah, and we've got your Let's See It and you're living
oh,
on
let's
Layla.
see. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You've got Living Off Layla, which that's super hard to
latest and
get. Yeah, right.
greatest. Yeah, and then where's my? Oh yeah, there's my I'm Not Happy.
Yeah.
But I think the other great thing about this band is they do kind of keep on giving, especially with Let's Rumble. I think this is just
Yeah.
an absolute masterpiece as well. But the problem is with both of these, you start to get a little bit of the waning of ambition, and they've lost their deal. Things are getting small. They're fighting. There's drugs and all that sort of stuff. So, what you get with both of these two, where's my? I'm Not Happy. So, what you get with both of these two is a little bit of drop in quality. They're shorter albums. I don't think they're nearly as produced to the absolutely super sumptuous, expensive sounding quality as Wasted in America. But yeah, this one's a real sort of flamethrower, dangerous sort of album. I almost think, unfortunately, like I say, I think it's only 10-ish songs or something, and a few of them I'm not crazy about, but I almost feel like the mystique of this album is even better than the first one. But they're both so high up there. I would probably go 9, 10, 9 across those, and then it really does start to drop off. I'm Not
Yeah.
Happy. It's got some good songs, but yeah, it's really starting to drop off at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was a nice surprise because I don't know. Yeah, I sort of had this feeling that they've done two great albums and it's things they're not on a major. Well, I don't know. If this is I don't think it's a major label really at this point.
No,
But
it's kind of like this weird little
yeah,
polygram deal of
yeah,
RCA,
it kind
BMG.
of they probably had major distribution, but it's
Mine's
not.
made in Germany.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I don't think it came out in the States, I believe.
no. I mean, it's not getting the big
Yeah.
push and the music. There's no music videos. I don't think so. I wasn't expecting much, but yeah, it just carries on really nicely from Wasted in America. Let's Rumble,
Yeah.
Spinning Wheel, yeah, great songs. Um, so if you haven't checked this one out and you do like those first two albums, don't stop there. And yeah, and like you said, Martin, there's some good ones on this one. Super Fragilistic, which opens up this the album is really good, but yeah, also very good. I haven't got anything else after that. Probably heard them. I probably heard it online, but Living Off Layla is very hard to actually get a physical copy of. And I think Mark Toran from Bullet Boys actually does some vocals on that one as well, which is a bit bizarre. But yeah, and they did tour. I think they've even reformed and well got together and done some tours. They're bigger in the UK than they are in the States. Like or Europe
Yeah.
and the UK. They go over there and they do not too bad, but I
That's
think
right, Steve. I remember that. They were a big for whatever reason, they were in Kerrang a lot.
yeah, they
They
were.
were one
Yeah.
of these bands that just seemed like, they looked like a really big band by the amount they were in Kerrang. So,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. But
And just to mention, just for the record, so So yeah, on Let's Rumble, they get a switch out of the guitarist for Darren Householder.
Oh yeah.
But then the old lineup is back. You
Mm.
know, then they're back to the legitimate lineup. Let's Eat is just Jizzy and Joey with some guys. But yeah, basically it's all legitimate lineup, you know, for the longest time.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like so Jizzy's also done some solo albums which are pretty reasonable actually. Not I mean not love hate quite quality, but pretty good because you know like we talked about his vocals and we I think both kind of like his vocals and his lyrics. He's written books as well, so he's an intelligent guy. But yeah, so Jizzy and Joey they've got together for Jizzy solo albums, but I think there's some issues there between the guitarist Johnny Love and Jizzy. I think there's been some friction or problems there. And Skid, he's from what I've heard, he's like taken off overseas somewhere, like he's in the Philippines or somewhere like this is what I was able to find out. He's just left the music business, so to speak, or not contactable. So yeah, it's I think that you could pretty much, and of course now Jizzy's in Quite Right after being in Rat, LA Guns, and then he was in Quite Right, and then he left Quite Right, and he's back in Quite Right. So yeah,
You know, that Skid story, I just I think of people like that, or you know, Doug Pinnick from King's X. There's a few others. I feel this way a little bit about Rich Ward from Stuck Mojo and Fozzy, where you know, I if I was Skid, I would actually be pretty bitter because you know, it's not fun when somebody's an absolute genius at what they do. They're
mm,
so good at it, they're so talented, and then they don't get rewarded for it, right? So you know, it's there's artists all over the world, and there's people who can play, you know, there's 7-year-old Japanese drummers who are better than John Bonham and all that kind of stuff, right? Or better
mm,
than Neil Peart or
mm,
whatever, right?
mm,
You know, you see all these YouTube videos. So there's musicians everywhere, there's visual artists everywhere. But you know, to have a genius actually you know, write the music and the lyrics and actually put the albums out, and they happen and they all get produced and they come out and they got a band, and to do all the complicated steps and be a genius at it, and have all this happen. I just think that the basically the industry didn't work for him.
mm.
If it worked properly and if you rewarded art, that guy would be massive because he's a genius.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely, totally agree. Well, hey, thanks, Martin. This has been a really fantastic chat, and yeah, really great to get your insights. I know you have talked. I think you have talked about love hate, you know, a little bit, you know, on your YouTube channels or on your definitely. I've heard it on your podcast.
I'm sick of hearing my own voice talk about everything because I've talked about everything a little bit, right? It's like Pete and I coming up with a show every Friday. We're going,
Yeah.
did we do that one already? We have no idea anymore, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
I'm pretty sure though you haven't done a show specifically on love hate, so
yeah.
it's great that at least you've just had half an hour with me to be able to talk about them and you know just give some info on them and yeah, really fantastic for you to come on my show and join me for this. So I really appreciate it.
Okay, very cool.
So anything you want to sort of talk about? Anything coming up? I know martinpopoff.com. That's the place to go for your books.
Yeah, all the books are there, and we've got the Contrarians YouTube video show. I've got the audio podcast, History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff, and then I'm on Pete's show, Sea of Tranquility, every Friday. But yeah, the books are all, you know, I sign them, send them out from the office here. There's PayPal buttons for international, Canada, or the States. It's about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks, Martin. And everyone watching, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button. Tell us what you think about Love Hate. If you are familiar with them or if you're not, you know, go check them out and hit the subscribe button. And thanks again for watching. Okay. We'll see you later.